This week in the Vikings, we're going to be looking at the last Anglo-Saxon kings and some very important battles to remember. I thought it'd be good to start with a picture of a Viking ship sailing across, and I've seen some really good examples of the ones you've made over the last few weeks. The last Anglo-Saxon kings. At the end of this, the aim is that you can explain how the last Anglo-Saxon kings helped to shape Britain. I know we're looking at Vikings, but the Anglo-Saxons play a very important part during their time. After all, they were there before the Vikings. To find out if you've been successful, your success criteria, you can identify and order Anglo-Saxon kings on a timeline. You can explain key concepts of the reign of the last Anglo-Saxon kings, and you can distinguish between historically accurate and inaccurate events. Did you know, for example, that the Anglo-Saxon helmets did not actually have horns on them like some of the pictures in stories that you see? For example, How to Train Your Dragon. There are lots of horns on those helmets, but in actual fact, the helmets looked a little bit more like this. Let's have a quick recap. What do you think are the most important or memorable facts you have learnt about history of the Vikings and Anglo-Saxon kings who ruled in England during this period? Think about what you've learnt so far. A few weeks ago when you looked at some of the kings at the beginning, a few of the kings. If you've got a piece of paper or even your little pack together, just jot down with a pencil any king's names that you can remember or any facts that you can recall. That'll help you with your activities later. As you go through this video, you can add some extra information. Just pause the video whenever you need to, jot down the information, and then restart it when you're ready to move on. First, we're going to look at Edward the Confessor. In AD 1042, Edward III, the Confessor, became King of England after he was invited to return to Britain from exile in Normandy. He ruled until his death in AD 1066. Edward was the son of King Ethelred the Unready, and his second wife Emma, and the half-brother of Hardicanute. He was also known as the Confessor because he led a very religious life, and he was a kind and thoughtful king. Edward built Westminster Abbey. Edward married a woman called Edith in AD 1045. She was the daughter of the Earl of Wessex Godwin. Edward and Edith did not have any children. Godwin of Wessex. Edward the Confessor had strong links with Normandy in France. He had grown up there and had the support of William, the Duke of Normandy. Some people in Britain did not like this close relationship. Between AD 1050 and 1052, Godwin, Earl of Wessex army tried to push Edward off the throne, but Edward's army defeated Godwin, and Edward sent him out of the country. However, Edward did form a good relationship with Godwin's son, Harold, who became king for a short time after Edward's death. How do you think Edward might have felt about returning to England to become king? Do you think he would have been happy? Worried? Can you think of 3 positive and 3 negative reasons? You can either jot them down or you can speak them to the screen now. Harold II. Edward the Confessor died in AD 1066, and Harold became king. He was a strong leader, and he fought hard to keep the throne. In 1066, Harold's army marches up to Yorkshire to stop Harald of Norway and his huge army from invading. Harold's men killed Harald and thousands of his Norwegian soldiers in the Battle of Stamford Bridge. However, only weeks later, Harold had to fight again. William, the Duke of Normandy, thought he should be King of England, and so he and his army came to battle against Harold. Harold and his troops marched down from Stamford Bridge to face the Normans in the Battle of Hastings. In the week 14 slides, there are links to find out about the kings on the BBC Bite-Size Education page on Vikings. There's also a link to the Battle of Hastings where you can learn a little bit more through video. In week 14 slides, I have put links to the BBC Schools page on the Vikings, where there'll be more information on the kings and also more information on what we're going to read about next, which is the Battle of Hastings. So after you've watched this, you might want to go over there and have a little look at the video and have a little look at the information they have for you. The Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings is known as a significant historical event which shaped the future of Britain. King Harold and his army fought against King William of Normandy in the battle which took place on the 14th of October 1066, a very important date to remember. The battle took place in a place called Battle in East Sussex, about 7 miles away from Hastings, and lasted from dawn until dusk. It ended when Harold was shot through the eye with an arrow. His troops reacted, and William and his soldiers were victorious. What do you think it would have been like to be a soldier fighting in the Battle of Hastings? They would have had weapons a little bit like this sword I'm going to show you now. They would have been a bit bigger, a bit heavier, and a bit sharper. And people would have had to fight person to person. Why do you think Harold's troops retreated when he was killed? Have a look at the map here and see where people moved around. Can you find where Hastings is and where the battle took place at the bottom of the map? Follow the arrows and see the routes that people travelled. Harald from Hardrada Norwegian's fleet came in this way and down here to York. King Harold's army marched up here, defeated him here, and then came down here for the Battle of Hastings. William of Normandy came across from France here. Well, this was the end of an era. Although Edgar Atheling did briefly rule as king for a few months, William of Normandy was crowned the new King of England on the 25th of December, AD 1066. The Viking Age in Britain and Anglo-Saxon rule came to an end. In time, William became known as William the Conqueror. The Normans would now go on to rule in Britain for over 80 years. Why do you think William became known as William the Conqueror? Who thinks being known as William the Conqueror is a good title to have? And who thinks being known as William the Conqueror is a bad one? Perhaps you could show me by sending me a little message in the Vikings page on Padlet to let me know what you think about being called William the Conqueror, or anything else you've learned about the Battle of Hastings or all these kings. Now it's your turn to go away and do your activities. In your packs, you've either got to complete Activity 1 or Activity 2. Some of you have got Activity 1. For this one, it says put the pictures of the Anglo-Saxon kings into the correct place on the timeline. Then when you've done that, underneath, write the king's name and any facts you can remember about them underneath. That could be from this video, or it could be from the information that you've found in your books or any extra research you've done. If you haven't got that activity, you're going to be doing Activity 2. I want you to write about the Battle of Hastings. Write a few paragraphs. Remember, what was it? Who was there? Why did it happen? How did it happen? And where did it happen? You can use your books, you can use your own research, or you can use some of the information you learned here. I look forward to seeing you again for another video next week when we're going to learn more about the artifacts that the Vikings had.